Hey everybody, my name is Matt, and you're watching Broke Rednecks Prepping. Coming to you here from the mighty town of Spur, Texas, nestled in the red dirt badlands of the, well, not quite Texas Panhandle, but somewhere out there. What I want to talk to y'all today about is some proper strategies, different ways to think about what you're going to do. As a bit of an irony for those of y'all who saw my video yesterday about spring water and finding good backup water, pipe busted here in town. They got it fixed and the water's running again, but it is under a boil order, so pretty much you have to boil all the water. Now, we're not even in a grid down scenario, not that that's a big deal. We can boil water, and God knows we had enough cases of it laying around. But something to think about is little things happen all the time, and you need to have a plan for when those things happen. Now, nephew and I were out at one of our backup bug out locations today, kind of checking it out, seeing how things are going. And it got me to thinking that it would be a good idea, and something we've kind of slacked on. We have a general idea of where we would bug out or when, or what our strategy is for things, but it occurred to me we really don't have a great idea. We don't have a written in stone plan, a true strategy. And so, sat down, worked on a couple, but I wanted to share with you guys my thought process on it. Now, on a prepping strategy, yes, I have my notebook here. One of the things you want to do first is triage. Figure out statistically, based on weather patterns, whatever, what SHTF event is most likely to occur in your area. I mean, if you're in California, you're probably not worried about hurricanes, but if you're in Houston, you're probably not worried about, say, an earthquake. You need to figure some of those things out. If you live in Oklahoma and you know that you're going to get tornadoes all the time, you probably don't want to be preparing for, I don't know, wildfires. Well, you may in Oklahoma, but point is you want to prepare for what's most likely going to happen. If you're in a town with, in our case, older infrastructure, you're going to have to file away that periodically you're going to have some power outages. Periodically you're going to have a water issue. If you live in the country and have to go off a well, periodically it's going to need to be maintenance and you're going to have to deal with that. Now I know that's not a true grid down scenario, but when the water's out for 3 or 4 days or you don't have electricity in the middle of August, it kind of feels like it's a grid down. I mean, hell, it might as well be the zombie apocalypse when it's 105 degrees outside. So you want to get a good idea of what is most likely to occur. And for those of y'all prepping, and those of us really prepping for a grid down scenario, for when the government isn't working, for when power is out not for a couple days but for several months or years or whatever else, a true SHTF scenario, you want to differentiate your preps for natural disasters from a grid down, from a true long-term grid down. If you know a hurricane's coming and you're probably going to be without power for a week or two, you're probably going to do things a little differently than you would if you're going to be without power for a year. I mean, if we're out power for a week, we can go turn on the generator, put some gas in it, we're good to go. If we're without power long term, we need to be thinking about things like solar and wind and that sort of thing. But the reason I say to differentiate and break them up is because the solar panels that we would use in a long-term grid down situation, picking an example, are not going to be real helpful in a tornado or a hurricane because chances are they're in another state by the time it passes. So you want to make sure you have your short-term kind of small emergency preps separated from your long-term preps. Don't think that just because you have solar power and you're off the grid that if a F3 tornado goes by, you're fine. You're not fine. Make sure you've got that split up. And I see a lot of preppers not doing that. They think that because they're off-grid, they can survive anything. And oftentimes that's absolutely not true. These guys who are planning years and years out, who homestead, who do everything else, aren't necessarily prepared for a short-term problem. And that's something you want to have in mind, that it's going to be a little bit different. In the case here where we've got water, but it's a boil order, can't just go drink it, we're going to need to either have the capacity to boil, and sometimes, especially after natural disasters, you've got the boil order, no electricity. So you want to have either a ton of bottled water, $300 and some, you can buy a pallet of it at Tractor Supply. You want to have a bunch of bottled water somewhere, or you want to have the ability to purify your water and purify larger amounts. So, but that doesn't necessarily have to be long term. You're not going to go find a spring in the middle of the woods because the water's out for 2-3 days while they're fixing the pump station thing down the road. It's slightly different. I'm not going to go live in the woods without air conditioning and cable on a Sunday when football season's about to start because some idiot cracked a pipe. We can triage these things differently. Anyway, keep that in mind. Natural disasters and true grid down scenarios are two very different things, and you want to be prepared and trained for those different things. You also really want to give a lot of thought, and I don't say preppers doing this, you want to give a lot of thought to who you're prepping for. Now, some people, I see a lot of these guys doing channels, they're going to lone wolf it and go run off in the woods. I see other people, they've got prepper groups. They have a set group of people ahead of time, 8 or 10 folks or whatever, that they're going to go off and they have their bug out location. This guy's a gardener and that guy's a medic and all that. That's fine. But you need to know that sort of thing ahead of time. And if you're prepping for a natural disaster scenario, that group may change. I mean, if one of your, I don't know, something's coming through, it's a storm, and you need to bug out of an area because water is rising or something like that, what are you going to do? Leave your neighbors in the front yard when you can just as easily give them a ride down the road? But you need to factor some of those things in because, on the other hand, if the grid's down for years and we're having to eat grass and things like that to survive, I'm probably not going to share what I don't have. Now, we have a group that we kind of prep with. Everybody has different talents, different things they like, interests, that sort of thing, and different things they bring to the table, and that's fine. But one of the things that I have worked in, especially for a long-term grid down scenario, is that we're going to have to add people to the group who aren't necessarily preppers. We don't necessarily have a true, I mean, I'm in EMT school, but we don't necessarily have a true medical professional. If we're going to be off the grid, we may want somebody who's better at carpentry than I am. Anybody who's seen a deck that I've built is probably going to agree we need to get a for real carpenter. So you need to plan ahead for that. One, you just want to have extras because 1 is none, 2 is 1, 3 is better. But on the other hand, you want to have the ability, if you see some people you want to take on, a family member who's got to come, a fellow prepper that you know who, for whatever reason, lost their preps. Why would you throw away just because they can't bring food to the table? Doesn't mean they can't bring training, workable skills, a similar mindset that can work with you. So you need to kind of have that in mind. You need to wrap your head around it ahead of time, that if you've got a group, you may want and need to add to that group. But that means you have to have extra things set aside, just the way it is. And also, when you're looking at your group, you want to make sure that the people you're prepping with are not people who are tactical. A lot of people have commented lately that I make jokes about tactical training, and it's true, I do. But the reason for it is I see so many guys focused on looking tactically that I don't see them acting and behaving tactically. I'm seeing guys that basically should buy stock in 511 and have an M4 carbine that is beautiful to look at and has every add-on. But based on the way they're carrying it, based on the way they're speaking, the information they're putting out, things like that, I'm not overly convinced they know what they're doing. And when I see their videos on their bug out plans and everything else, I'm not getting the idea. I'm getting the idea that they look awesome. I'm not getting the idea they are awesome. And as we do these videos, you're going to hear me harp on sometimes boring is better. You'll hear me say phrases like slow is fast. The person who shoots accurately is better than the person who shoots quickly as a rule. Well, when you're assessing a prepper group, you want to make sure that if somebody's coming in and they're telling you that they were a former Navy SEAL sniper or something, that they can actually shoot. You want to know what they're bringing to the table. And you want to know the psychologies of the people you have involved. I mean, at some point you may have to be like, you know what? I like this guy, but I think he's Shane from The Walking Dead and we don't need that. Or, this guy's irresponsible, he's stupid. I've had family members that have had addictions with alcohol or drugs. They're not coming with me. I love them dearly, but at the same time, they're going to be a detriment to the rest of us because they couldn't overcome addiction. They don't have the self-discipline to do certain things to survive. And if you are going to bring children along, as we would, you need to be prepared for them too. Children cannot take care of themselves. It's going to be a culture shock for them, not having electricity, not having television, internet, tablets. We've been there. And I say that because you're going to have to prepare toys, you're going to have to prepare nutritional stuff, you're going to have clothes for them. We can't just have the attitude that, well, if the grid's down, my kids are going to be tough. Doesn't work that way. They're still kids. And you have to treat them as such. If I'm bringing, say, my elderly mother, I'm going to have to file away. She has medical needs, things like that that have to be addressed. You need to know this ahead of time so you're not surprised and going, oh crap, if she doesn't get this prescription by tomorrow at noon, she's dead. What are we going to do? Be like, well, you've had a good run, deal with it? I mean, you need to think about these things ahead of time. So know your group, know who you're with. If you're the only prepper in it, if you've got a spouse who doesn't prep, understand that. Understand that if you're taking them along, then you probably want to be prepared for what they need as well. I see a lot of these videos where I don't really see that covered. And as we were kind of strategizing earlier on some of this, it's something that really occurred to us. We've got bug out bags, but do we have a bug out bag for mom? We've got dogs. Do we have extra dog food? Do we have the kind of things we'd need for them? And that's something that kind of occurred to me as we were talking about it. But anyway, enough on the group thing. Know who you're going with, train with them, practice with them, get to know them pretty well. And if you're bringing people that aren't necessarily in the prepper community or of that prepper mindset, and that's fine, make sure you have their needs addressed too. It sucks, but it's probably on you. Planning ahead of time is the way I kind of worded this bullet point. And what I mean by that is don't simply say, we're going to bug out to, I don't know, the woods. We have a couple backup bug out locations, places we could go. But the different places would be determined by what the event is. If it's an ice storm or something like that where the power's out and it's cold as shit and I don't want to stay here, well, we can bug out to a hotel in Lubbock or something like that. We can go a little further south to where I work in Odessa and hole up there. We don't necessarily have to make an event out of it. If on the other hand a solar flare hits, fries everything electric on planet Earth, and we're back to sticks and stones, well, that's a dog of a different color. And we would need to, based on that information, go to one of our backup locations where we could, well, live off the land and everything else, where we'd have water and the ability to cultivate plentiful game until we figured out how to make society again, I guess. But those are also things that everybody in your group needs to know, because it's not like everybody's going to be sitting around the prepper kitchen table with, dressed in camo with ARs when this happens. Somebody's going to be in school, somebody's going to be at work, somebody will be at the grocery store. If a major big event happened, we're probably not going to see it coming. And as people talk about other things that would make society collapse, so a civil war, for example, or something like that, these things have broken out before. World War I broke out when I believe it was Archduke Ferdinand got whacked in Sarajevo. I guarantee you that morning when everybody in the rest of the world got up out of bed and had their post toasties, nobody thought to themselves, today is going to be the day that World War I starts. I know on a Tuesday in September some years back, I worked at a bar, so I was sleeping in. I didn't think anything was going wrong, but I'll be damned if September 11th didn't hit us. You never see these things coming. They're by nature a surprise. Well, my mom was at work. I was sleeping off, having worked at the bar the night before, on and on. Nobody was sitting around waiting for that to drop. We all have lives, and there's no sense not living a life while we're waiting for the end to come or something. But you need to understand that, all right, if we're going to bug out at this location, if this type of disaster hits, then we're all going to point A. If it's this type of disaster, we're going to point B. If we're going to bug in, as they say, and hole up at the house, that we all have a rallying point. We have somewhere we meet. People have with them in their vehicles the means they need to get from point A to wherever they need to go. I mean, that's just basic planning ahead. But the thing is, if a disaster hits, and think of the panic you see on something like a September 11th or certain events like that, where people weren't planning ahead, people are in a panic because they're surprised by it. The person who is prepared, the person who trains for it, is going to be the person who does best in a circumstance like that. But you have to plan that ahead. You know what? Written plans are great too. Sometimes when I've used a defibrillator, one of those little defibrillating boxes they have, you see them in offices all the time. I've practiced training with it 100 times. First time I have to use it, I was real happy they had those drawings with stick figures showing me where to put the pads, because I forgot. Sometimes it's helpful to have something you can grab that has written instructions. It's, I guess, something about the human brain, it's authoritative. But if you have that planned out ahead of time and written out ahead of time, you're going to have a lot less confusion. And the least confusion you have, the fewer mistakes. You also want to have backups, because something's going to happen to screw you up. I don't know, some North Korea shoots an EMP at us and ruins everything electric in the U.S., and we decide we're going to bug out to point A. Well, we have to cross a river. Problem is, who knows, maybe the dam, the hydroelectric dam on that river went out because of the EMP. It's not a big leap with all the hydroelectric dams we have. Well, if those things go out, the rivers are going up and they're taking out bridges and roads along the way quite often, or at least flooding certain areas, and might not be able to get to bug out A. So instead, we're going to have to know that if that happens, we're going to bug out B. Anyway, point is, have backups, because a plan is good, but like everything else, 1 is done, 2 is 1, 3 is better. So have some backups. Now, you also want to practice with your stuff. One of my pet peeves about every one of these prepper videos I've watched, and God knows I've watched a lot, is you'll see a guy be in a bug out bag because he's going to go to his bug out location or go live in the Rockies or something like that. Or the get home bags. I have seen a lot of videos from big prepper sites where they have a get home bag. And I mean, it's literally, hey, my truck's broke down, there's a natural disaster, I'm going to grab my backpack and go home. Well, I mean, most of us have one. And I'll see them busted out, and they've got everything in it from the concealed carry gun or extra water or a Parker or something. But I always see guys, they have fire starters. Not like a lighter. They like have those little flint fire starters you buy at Walmart. And because, seriously, if you're having to walk from where you work to your house, maybe 30 miles, are you really going to be hiding under an underpass with a flint sparker making a fire? Get a cigarette lighter or two, put some matches, whatever, put them in a Ziploc bag so they're dry. Now, the reason I bring up the little fire starter thing is because I don't use those because it's hard and I really don't want to. I was an Eagle Scout, I know how. But I'm not a kid anymore, it's dumb, and I'm not going to do it. Now, I've also noticed that all these yahoos who have these nifty little fire starters, they're all still in the package. My suspicion being because it's hard and they don't actually want to use it, but it looks cool as shit because they got it for $3 at Academy or something. If you're going to be that guy who has a little flint fire starter, practice with it ahead of time. Because if you were freezing your butt off in the middle of the woods that for whatever reason you're walking through on the way to get home, you're going to be there for a while shivering if you've got to actually... You need to know what you can use to start a fire because, trust me, it's not as easy as you see on TV. So, practice with these things. I pick on the fire starter because I'm just like, why are they encouraging people to waste their money on something that you're literally never going to use? Buy a pack of lighters. They're cheap. I've checked. I've seen them. They're not that expensive. For like $1.99 in the checkout aisle at Walmart, fact check me here, you can find 3 lighters that will work. I mean, you can start fires for a year. But if you just insist on using flint because you feel like it, practice with it. The same goes for things like guns. I see a lot of guys that have a ton of guns. Practice with them. If you have a type of gun you cannot afford to practice with, sell it and get one you can. I know everybody needs a 223, an AR-15 or an M4 carbine. If you can't afford to buy 223 ammo to get proficient, I get it, it's expensive. Go get a 22 version. A 22 you're good with is a whole lot better than a 223 or a 308 you're not. Make sure you can practice with this stuff. Another thing that I throw on practicing with is cooking. And everybody's going to be like, I cook all the time. Why do you need to practice cooking? I heard that one the other day, in fact. And the reason I say that, because any idiot can cook on a stove in the house. But if you're going to plan on having to be off-grid and using a Dutch oven, you probably want to play with it ahead of time so you know that the cobbler or the biscuits are going to come out well. Because when food is finite, you do not want to screw it up. If you're going to plan on cooking over a fire using wood instead of charcoal, you need to practice with it. So you know, as we learned the hard way, that barbecue pit that we bought cheap is not built for that kind of heat. But also, so you get an idea of how fast food cooks when it's on that kind of heat. Mesquite cooks hotter than pecan. Pecan cooks hotter than charcoal, on and on. Now, that may not seem like a big thing, but we've all burned a meal or two, and that's in a controlled situation in a kitchen. Hell, I've screwed up meals in a microwave. Now, when you have a limited amount of food, when you shoot that one bunny rabbit that's going to feed you and your family, or you catch the 2 fish, accidentally ruining them, charring them, setting on fire, something like that, is a big problem, because that's all the food you have. On the other hand, undercooking things and you get sick, it's not like you can run to CVS and buy some Pepto-Bismol. If you eat bad pork because you shot a feral hog and that's going to feed you for the week, or some fish or whatever else, and you get sick in a true grid down situation, you're screwed. And it sounds dumb, but if you are going to cook foods all the time, porks, fish, different birds, you need to practice cooking with them ahead of time. I can't emphasize that enough. You don't want to get sick, and when you don't have HEB or Albertsons down the street to run to go buy more food if you screw up dinner, You want to make sure that what food you have isn't wasted. Anyway, my point is practice cooking with a campfire, practice cooking off grid. Get yourself one of those little barbecue pits, but instead of buying charcoal like lazy people, go out and actually buy some firewood. Figure out how much wood you actually need to cook off of, how long it will stay warm, because a cooking fire may also be the we don't freeze to death tonight fire. So learn the differences. If you're going to say, I'm going to smoke fish and survive on all winter like one of those people in Alaska, you need to smoke some of those fish when you don't have to have them to live. Because if you're going to make mistakes, do it while it's not going to destroy you. Anyway, point is practice cooking. Information literacy is another thing I don't see a lot of preppers pushing. I did a video recently on having just a small idea of some books you could have for a prepper library. But when looking into prepping issues, you need to know what your deficiencies are. There are certain things I do not need a book or manual to tell me how to take apart and maintenance a Glock 22. I probably need a book or manual to take apart, I don't know, the engine of a Nissan pickup. If you're going to have certain things out there, if you're going to have to do certain things, I can live off the wild in some ways, but I'd like to have a book telling me that, wait, those look like blueberries, but they're actually really poisonous. Or, I didn't know that that was edible. Cool. We're not going to starve this week. Figure out what your deficiencies are and get some books and some manuals, some whatevers, to kind of fill in that information. That way you've got something to go back on, because if Google doesn't work, you're screwed. And I kind of have books and manuals separated, because on one hand you can get a book, be it, I don't know, the Boy Scout handbook that we have over here, or a cookbook, but you can also get manuals for things like working on a vehicle or something, say, more medical. Those things can come in handy because they actually have more how-tos with it. Also, you want training. The more training you have, the better, because the more situations you've learned how to deal with. My police academy instructors would refer to this as your intellectual tool belt. The more tools you have on your belt, the more situations you're prepared for. But you want to get as much training as you can on different things. You don't have to be an expert medic to have a little background on it. You don't have to be the world's foremost outdoor cook. Doesn't hurt to take a cooking class or two and something like this and learn a few new recipes. I mean, if you're going to go off and live by a river in Canada and eat nothing but brown trout, it's going to get old after a while if you don't figure out how to spice it up or do something with it. If you're going to have people along with you, it'd be a good idea to have some medical training. Or if you're going to be working with horses. See a lot of preppers say, I'm going to buy a horse. Great. Do you know how to ride one? Do you know how to train one when that one eventually dies or has a broken leg or something like that? Figure out what you don't know and try to address those deficiencies. The more you know, the better. But information literacy is a vital thing. You also need to learn how to research information using something like an encyclopedia or something like that. It's not enough to be able to, when you find it, read it and understand it. You have to be able to find the information too. And like I say, you're not going to have Google here all the time to help you out with it. Anyway, these are just a few thoughts I had today on some prepper strategy. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have some comments, please feel free to throw them out there. But like I say, this is Broke Rednecks Prepping. Thanks for watching. Do hit the like and subscribe button, and I hope to see you next time.